insane. We had an issue with our microphone, so we recorded a few episodes and the microphone cut out, and then so we got microphone here, microphone there, microphone over there, microphone everywhere. Latte sip. I make a good latte. Make sure this is on because my mom's gonna text me. Hey guys, it's Cam from Craft and Tailored, and in this episode of Neckerchiefs, we are talking about, just kidding. This is what is on my wrist, but I'm wearing a neckerchief today. Hey guys, it's Cam from Craft and Tailored. In this episode of What is on My Wrist, we're talking about a fan favorite. It is the Rolex Submariner reference 16610LV. And the nickname of this guy is the Kermit. So really interesting watch. I would kind of put this watch in a category of its own. It's not really vintage, but these watches are unique and interesting, and I really like them, so you'll see them pop up in our shop from time to time. They're a watch that I really like because they're kind of in a category of their own, and we'll get into the details of that in a minute, but it's, I guess, a modern-ish watch, but it's definitely something that is of transitional nature, which is something that we definitely are into, and something that, you know, obviously the collectors alike are also into. So we've had a couple of articles that we've published on them. We get requests for them all the time. I'm very selective in which ones we bring into the shop, and we have one here in our inventory, and it's been spending a little bit of time on the wrist, and wanted to use this as an example to talk about the reference range and kind of give you some ins and outs of the Kermit and why they're awesome and worthy of collecting, and obviously spending some time on the wrist. So let me give you a little bit of background on the 16610LV and talk a little bit about why the LV, or the Kermit, received its nickname, and why it has a cult-like following, and why they've become collectible, and why I like them even though they're a modern watch. And I'll say that, you know, I am a vintage nerd 100%. Craft and Tailored as a whole is a vintage watch company that specializes in vintage watches. And so this is kind of on the cusp of what we would specialize in, but I really like the LVs, and I think they kind of possess some details that make them their own thing. The Rolex Submariner 16610LV was first introduced in 2003 by Rolex at Baselworld to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Rolex Submariner. And what's interesting is the marquee color of the Rolex brand, if you can't guess, is green. So the boxes are green, the highlights and the paperwork have always been green. You know, anything that is commemorative is always going to be green with Rolex. So to kind of celebrate that 50th anniversary, Rolex created the 16610LV. The Rolex 16610LV is the Hulk. And so the difference between the Hulk and the Kermit is the Hulk is ceramic, the Hulk has a Maxi style dial, Maxi style hands, ceramic bezel, and the Maxi case, whereas the 16610LV, aka the Kermit, possesses a little bit more of a traditional case, so a non-Maxi style case with the tapered lugs. It possesses an anodized aluminum bezel insert versus a ceramic, and a couple of other features that you would find in, like, for example, the 16610. What's also really interesting is the 16610 is a watch that has a very long production period, and the 16610LV is not like your stereotypical or standard 16610. And what I think makes them ultimately special is it's a sub-reference of a reference that was produced for a really long time, but there are key and distinct characteristics that you only find in the 16610LV within that production period that don't exist outside of just that watch. So yes, it's a 16610 with a green bezel, but ultimately it's not, because you have the introduction of what we would call the Maxi style dial and Maxi style handset. So in 2003, with the 16610LV, we have this Maxi style dial, which is now a standard on all ceramic subs, making it a bit of a unique entry, because now this is something that is standard, but you know, in 2003, this was new. So we have really big, wide, and broad lume plots and hands, actually, that we see in the 16610 that are now standard throughout all the Maxi series ceramic watches that are here. And what's interesting is if you look at a normal black 16610 from 2003 and an LV, you can actually notice the difference in the hands and the size of the lume plots. So both the 16610 LV and just a standard Rolex 16610 have a water resistance rating of 300 meters or 1,000 feet. They're both made from 904L stainless steel. Both references come equipped with the modern trip lock crown, a reference 93250 oyster flip lock bracelet with solid 801 end links. And even though the reference 16610 LV is just a few years old, it's been discovered, or I shouldn't say a few years old, but produced for a very short period of time. There's actually 8 different dial variants and 2 different bezel variants. So this one being produced in 2008, it produces what we would call like a skinny 4 insert or a non-flat 4. We've had a couple of Y and F serials that have what we would call a Mark 1 bezel insert versus a Mark 2, which this has. The flat 4 is basically, if you look at the inside of the 4 and 40 on the bezel, the top of it is flat, whereas the second version, or the more common version, has what we would call like a skinny 4. So basically the 4 is like it peaks at the top of the 4 versus kind of having that angular flat top on the inside element of that 4. So the Mark 1s with the flat 4 inserts are obviously very desirable because they're the true 50th anniversary, meaning that they were produced at the end of 2003 into 2004, whereas the later variants were produced at the later end of the run. But again, there are a lot of dial variants. We actually did an article on the Kermit, and I'll provide a link in the description below and or above so that you can check out that article on the Kermit series and kind of learn a little bit more about the reference. But again, I wanted to kind of just talk about this one. This specific example is really, really nice, and it's kind of more of like a wearable example. People get really crazy with the Kermits relating to the boxes and the papers and the hang tags and the press kits and all that stuff, and we've had those watches within our collection for sure. And don't get me wrong, I love collecting watches like that. But kind of the cool thing with this one being from 2008 is that for whatever reason, the bezel insert in 2008 typically takes on kind of this like lime green color, whereas some of the earlier variants, they kind of retain a more forest green color. I know that we're really splitting hairs here, but this is what this is all about, so let's split the hairs. I like this specific example because the case remains unpolished. It was a watch that was enjoyed and worn. The bezel insert has kind of taken on like this lime green kind of fade, which is cool. And the overall condition of this specific example is really, really nice. So I wanted to kind of just talk a little bit about this one. And the cool thing about some of these watches is that for sure you can go after one that is full set and flat 4 and, blah, 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 which is great. These watches will definitely remain collectible because of a low production number and also because they were a reference that is a sub-reference of a reference range. I know that might sound confusing, but essentially this watch was produced alongside the reference 16610. But again, as we were talking about the bezel insert, there's other elements that make this watch unique, like the hands and the dial, that truly make it a unique sub-reference of that specific period of time. And that's ultimately what creates that kind of collectability and desirability with the collector community. But I think people definitely do get hung up in the boxes and the papers and all that kind of stuff, and it's great. But this example is cool because although it will remain collectible and desirable, it doesn't retain the original boxes and papers, fortunately and unfortunately, because the owner just wore the watch and you can kind of see that, but it does retain a really nice unpolished, thick and even case. Again, it has that nice fade to it, and the overall condition of the watch is nice, meaning that you could enjoy and wear this watch without kind of like thinking too much about like, oh, if I lose the bezel protector, am I gonna like impact the value of the watch? It's kind of cool because on the wrist, I really like the look of the Kermit as opposed to the Hulk, which I've never really been into. I love the black Maxi dial paired with the lighter green anodized aluminum insert, and it's just fun wearing a watch like this. It's very eye-catching and kind of cool. So in any case, guys, thanks for tuning in. As always, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you guys have watch questions, if you guys are looking at something, need a second set of eyes, or you just want to talk watches, 2 things. You can feel free to drop us a line at info@craftandtailor.com. We also have a live chat on our website too, which is a new feature, so you can literally just type us, and myself or Tyler or one of our team will get back to you, and we can help you with a question related to one of our watches, which is located at craftandtailor.com. And be sure to follow us on Instagram if you're not already, because we are very active there with latest updates and all that stuff. So again, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, follow, thumbs up, thumbs down. Tell me you like my neckerchief. Tell me you don't like my neckerchief. I don't care. As always, guys, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you guys in the next one.